Alright, so we're going to be reviewing Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. This film picks up not too long after the events of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. At the moment, the Guardians are doing a job for the Sovereigns, these funny-looking gold people. They are meant to protect these very precious batteries that the Sovereigns need. However, Rocket decides to piss them off, and he steals the batteries anyway in order so he can go off and make a profit. The Sovereigns then go after the Guardians with the intent to kill them, but they are miraculously saved at the last minute by Ego, who is Star-Lord's, aka Peter Quill's, father. Ego then convinces Peter to go back with him to his planet so he can explain everything, where he's been, what happened with him and his mom, all that kind of stuff, and Peter decides to go along with Drax and Gamora. The plot is not really a cause and effect plot, which I found really interesting. There is no kind of imminent danger that the Guardians are trying to avert. The story is more of an introspective one and spends a lot more time diving into the characters with kind of two major action events happening while they're figuring themselves out. There is a lot of walking around and a lot of talking. All of the important stuff in this story is about the characters hashing out their issues. So the father-son issues, the sister issues between Nebula and Gamora, the friendship issues with Rocket, friendship betrayals with Yondu, and how all of these characters deal with this drama and how they move forward from it. It's a very dialogue-heavy, character-driven story. This means that this story is a lot more quiet than Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, but it also packs a heavier emotional punch. Marvel went from kind of real-world cool to really visually bland. Thor was never that impressive when it came to its space verse, and even the psychedelic Doctor Strange failed to deliver anything that was that visually stunning. It was all a bunch of been there, done that before. What I found really cool about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is that, they really embrace color in this film. When you look at Volume 1, it had a really cool look to it, did well to embrace a different visual style to the rest of the Marvel Universe. I would say Volume 2 tries to take that even farther. Visually, it's great until we have to see Earth. When we see Earth, we go back to kind of the boring, bland dullness that is the typical MCU. But also with this film, even just the way the aliens look and their worlds look, and how, for example, the Sovereign ships kind of are interacted as if they're like arcades and have arcade sounds, a very kind of embracing of 1980s looks and sounds. Very, very fun, incredibly engaging visually. So the songs also makes Volume 2 as a playlist isn't as exciting as Volume 1. Volume 1 is kind of hit after hit of rock and roll pop songs that definitely want to make you dance. Volume 2 is more introspective, just like the plot. The songs they're really interlinked with the plot and the tone of the film. Some reviewers have criticized the music, saying they didn't like it, and they didn't even know the songs. I'm sorry, but not knowing the songs is not an excuse to be negative about the film. That's just your own fault for being ignorant towards music. Musically, the songs are great tunes, and they are very different to Volume 1, and I admire Gunn for going so different with Volume 2 musically, but is, reminiscent of the style of Volume 1. Well, the score from Volume 2 is probably Marvel's best score. 2 really came to life, and you really felt it while you were watching the movie. A lot of other Marvel films just kind of have music in the background and you just kind of ignore it a little bit. But, musically, this film is actually really very good. The characters. The film was great for exploring relationships. Everyone has some sort of emotional arc. Like I said, you have the Nebula and Gamora stuff, Rocket and Yondu, Peter and Ego. I think another thing that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 got really right was its villain. The Sovereigns, they were used the least, but I still felt like they were still relatable characters. I feel like I understood them, and I feel like there's more to them, which can't be said about most of the other Marvel villains. Same with Karen Gillan's Nebula. I thought she was probably the best thing villain-wise in Volume 1. And again, she stands out so well in this film. I really feel like Nebula is a villain that has a lot of depth to her. Same with Ego. As a first-time villain, they did really well to make him feel like a flushed-out character, and that just cannot be said for the rest of the MCU. And in terms of brand new characters that were fun, I have to say Mantis. Some people are criticizing her and saying she's a bit silly, but I think she was great. I think her character was fun. sweet and naive, and I think it played off very well with her and Drax. This is one Marvel film that introduced a lot of different new characters, but also explored the existing characters very well. With the kind of exploration of these characters, you also have some very dark stuff that comes out. Peter learns more about Ego, and he learns more about Ego and his mother, and why Ego never came back. And Ego's like, look, I loved your mom. If I'd come back, I never would have left Earth. Couldn't have got on with his what Ego's overall mission is. And then that's when Ego lets the bomb drop, that he put a tumor inside Peter Quill's mother's brain. That is darker than anything we've seen in the entire MCU. That is darker than friendship betrayals. That is darker than Bucky killing Iron Man's parents and is masked inside this fun psychedelic film. The next thing that was interesting is they did with the character of Yondu. We learned why Yondu kidnapped Peter and what that original mission was supposed to look like. And I would say the character of Yondu had one of the best character arcs in the entire MCU so far. He went from being a jackass in Volume 1 to being slightly likable by the end, but in Volume 2, he's a little bit more tormented, and he has to deal with the mutinous crew, and he's being expelled from the Ravengers, basically because of a lie that he told, but the lie was actually in order to save someone. In his quest to kind of redeem himself and admit the truth, he then decides to sacrifice his life to save Star-Lord's. No other MCU death has felt this sad. In fact, I can only really think of Quicksilver as one of the kind of heroes, quote unquote, to die, and that was not emotional whatsoever. Yondu's death was impressive because you really felt emotional resonance to that. You really felt sad and kind of distraught by the fact that he was dead. I gotta tip my hat off to James Gunn for doing is killing such a fun and likable character as Yondu, and making it a huge emotional impact on the entire film. The overall connection to the MCU is minuscule. I mean, I was really happy that this wasn't a trailer or a promo for the next, wider MCU film. I'm really tired of the interconnectedness between all the films, and it was great that this one was just a standalone film. Sure, there might be little hidden references somewhere in there, but there was no kind of, big blaring reference. And yes, there are tons of really fun Easter eggs in this film. They do confirm that Stan Lee is playing the same character throughout all of the MCU films. And there's this fun little scene where he's in a spacesuit and he's talking to the Watchers about his experiences. Of course, there is another Howard the Duck reappearance, and there's plenty of other little Easter eggs and nods and things like that throughout the film, which made it a lot of fun to watch, but it's more fun to watch it than to have someone tell you what they all are. So overall, I thought Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 was an incredibly fun film. I think the tone of the film and focusing more on character story than on big action stuff was a wise move, and has a little bit of reminiscence to things like Star Wars, which actually has a lot of characters just hanging about and talking as opposed to big action stuff. It's more like that, and I think this film did very well. What did you think? Comment below, let me know. If you like this video, do subscribe and like it.